The ship from the Andarian Empire hovered above the clouds of Earth. Its hull shimmered with silver light as it entered the atmosphere. Inside, Captain Lyra Varen stood near the viewport, her violet eyes staring coldly at the blue and green world below. To her, Earth was nothing but a noisy, primitive place filled with chaos. She had read everything about it: wars, pollution, greed, endless divisions. The reports from her superiors described humans as unpredictable and emotional, a species too young to control its power. And yet, the Galactic Council had assigned her to represent Andaria in a joint research mission on this planet. Lyra didn't want to be here. She had led fleets, explored dying stars, and survived the frozen storms of Zera 9. But this, living among humans, felt like punishment. Her assistant, a young Andarian named Tev, looked uneasy as he checked the landing coordinates. "Captain, Earth's communication center has cleared our descent. The humans seem excited about our visit." Lyra's expression stayed flat. "Excited? They are always excited. They celebrate everything, even things they don't understand." Tev hesitated. Perhaps that is what makes them different. Lyra gave him a sharp look, but she said nothing. The ship slowly descended through a thick blanket of clouds. The blue glow of the planet brightened, and soon they could see cities below, clusters of lights like constellations on the ground. Lyra had to admit, even if only to herself, that it looked beautiful. But she would never say it out loud. When the ship landed at the human spaceport, crowds were waiting behind barriers. Reporters shouted questions. Soldiers and scientists stood at attention. The humans looked small compared to the tall Andarians, but their eyes were filled with curiosity and awe. Lyra noticed that many of them smiled. She didn't understand why. To her, smiles were a waste of energy. A human officer stepped forward, Commander Ethan Cole of Earth's United Forces. He had a calm face and steady eyes. "Welcome to Earth, Captain Varen. It's an honor to have you here." Lyra nodded stiffly. "Honor is not necessary. I am here by assignment." Ethan smiled slightly. "Still, we're glad you came." That irritated her more than it should have. Why were humans always so open? Didn't they understand formality? As they walked through the facility, Lyra noticed how different everything was from Andaria. The air smelled of oil and metal, but there was warmth too. Laughter, conversation, even music playing somewhere. She wasn't used to that. Andarians lived in silence and precision. Every word had purpose. Humans seemed to fill every gap with sound. That evening, during a welcoming meeting, human scientists presented their latest discoveries about interstellar communication. Lyra sat silently, analyzing every word. Humans were brilliant in their own chaotic way, combining logic with creativity, numbers with dreams. They spoke of ideas that shouldn't work, yet somehow did. It confused her. On Andaria, logic ruled everything. Emotion was weakness. But on Earth, emotion seemed to drive progress. After the meeting, Ethan approached her again. "You didn't say much," he said gently. "Did you find our work uninteresting?" Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Your methods are unconventional, yet they achieve results." "I will admit that much," Ethan chuckled. "That's how humans are. We fail 100 times before we succeed once." She tilted her head. "That is inefficient." "Maybe," he said, "but it teaches us what really matters." For the first time, Lyra didn't have an answer. Days passed. Lyra began her work at the Earth Research Base. Every day she observed humans, how they laughed while working, argued over small things, and supported each other when someone failed. They were emotional, yes, but there was strength in their connection. They didn't fear mistakes. They learned from them. She watched how humans treated her crew, too. They were respectful, curious, and sometimes even humorous. One day, a young technician gave Tev a small earth plant as a gift. "It's called a sunflower," the boy said with a grin. "It always turns toward the light." When Lyra saw Tev smile, she felt something strange, a warmth inside her chest, not unpleasant but confusing. She ignored it at first. Emotions were distractions. Yet each day the feeling grew. One morning, she joined Ethan on a visit to an ocean research site. The sea stretched endlessly, sunlight dancing on the waves. Lyra stood still, the wind brushing her silver hair. She had never seen anything like it. On Andaria, oceans were frozen plains. Here they were alive, moving, breathing, shining. Ethan glanced at her. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Lyra answered softly, almost unwillingly. "It is, Unexpected, he smiled. Earth is full of surprises. You just have to look beyond the noise. She turned to face him, curiosity flickering in her eyes. How can you find peace in such chaos? He looked toward the horizon. Because we learn to live with it. We don't try to control everything. Sometimes chaos brings change. Lyra didn't reply, but something shifted inside her. That night, she stood by the window of her quarters watching the stars. She thought about Ethan's words, about the humans' laughter, about the sunflower that always turned toward the light. Perhaps Earth wasn't as simple as she had believed. Perhaps there was something here that her people, and she herself, had forgotten. The next day, a small crisis occurred at the base. A malfunction in the reactor threatened to overload the system. Human engineers rushed to contain it. Lyra immediately took command, directing her Andarian crew with precision. But the humans refused to leave. They worked beside her, risking themselves to stabilize the core. When the danger passed, she found herself standing beside Ethan, both of them covered in dust. He was breathing heavily but smiling again. See, he said between breaths. Told you we're tougher than we look. Lyra stared at him. You risked your life for this facility, he shrugged. For my team, yes. That's what we do. Lyra didn't understand. On Andaria, risking oneself for others is considered illogical. Ethan looked at her seriously. Maybe, but for us it's what makes us human. That night, Lyra couldn't sleep. The image of humans working together, saving each other without hesitation, stayed in her mind. She began to realize something she had never considered before, that perhaps logic alone wasn't enough to build a great civilization. Maybe it took something more, something she had long ignored. Weeks later, during a quiet evening, Lyra stood outside the base. The Earth sky was full of stars, and for the first time she didn't feel like a visitor. She felt connected. A soft voice came from behind her. You've been quiet lately, Ethan said, stepping beside her. I have been thinking, she admitted. About what? About your people. About why you are the way you are. You confuse me yet. I find myself admiring you, Ethan smiled. That's a start. Lyra looked at the sky again. Perhaps Earth has something to teach me after all. The stars reflected in her violet eyes, and for the first time since she left her homeworld, Lyra felt a sense of calm. Maybe this blue planet wasn't a punishment. Maybe it was a lesson, one her heart was finally ready to learn. Captain Lyra Varen had been on Earth for 3 months now. The planet that once felt noisy and chaotic had slowly begun to reveal its quiet side. Every sunrise, every sound of rain, every distant laugh from the humans in the base, all of it had become part of her daily rhythm. She had changed in small ways, though she tried not to admit it. Her sharp tone had softened. Her curiosity about human behavior had grown, and she no longer looked at the blue sky with disdain. Now she often found herself standing by the window, watching clouds drift like silver islands. Tev, her young assistant, noticed the difference. Captain, he said one morning while checking the energy readings, you seem calmer these days. Lyra didn't look up. Calmer? Yes, Tev said carefully. You used to call this planet inefficient. Now you seem to enjoy being here. Lyra hesitated, then sighed. Enjoy is a strong word. I am only observing. Tev smiled faintly. Observation is how change begins. She didn't reply, but she knew he was right. Something in her was changing. Something she couldn't define. That afternoon, she joined Commander Ethan Cole for an inspection of the joint laboratory. The humans had built new communication modules using a mix of Earth technology and Andarian energy cells. Lyra was impressed. She watched as human engineers worked with care and excitement, discussing ideas, making jokes, and sharing food during breaks. She turned to Ethan. Your people never stop talking. He laughed. That's how we share ideas. And stories. You'd be surprised how much inspiration comes from simple conversation. Lyra frowned slightly. On Andaria, silence means focus. Talking during work is seen as distraction. Ethan shrugged. Maybe, but for us it keeps us connected. We don't just build things, and we build trust. Lyra studied his expression. There was warmth in his eyes, the kind she had rarely seen among her own kind. She realized that humans didn't just use logic. They used emotion as a guide. They trusted feelings even when those feelings led them into risk or failure. It was strange, but also strangely admirable. Later that day, a sudden storm hit the base. The winds howled and the sky turned gray. The storm knocked out one of the power grids, leaving part of the facility in darkness. Humans rushed around, working to stabilize the systems. Lyra immediately organized her team. Ethan's voice came over the comm. "Captain Varen, we need help at the southern panel. The winds are too strong for the drones." Lyra didn't hesitate. "I'll handle it." She grabbed her protective suit and stepped outside. The wind whipped against her face, carrying cold rain that glittered like silver shards. Ethan was already there, struggling to hold the panel steady. "Stubborn human," Lyra muttered as she joined him. He grinned through the storm, and proud of it. Together they secured the panel. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the field around them. For a moment, Lyra looked up. The storm's wild beauty took her breath away. It was raw, uncontrolled, and alive. It reminded her of Earth itself. When they finally returned to the base, drenched and exhausted, Ethan handed her a towel. "You didn't have to come out there, you know." Lyra looked at him calmly. "You asked for help. On Andaria, orders are to be followed," he chuckled softly. "Maybe, but you didn't do it because of an order, did you?" Lyra hesitated. His question stayed in her mind long after the storm ended. The next few days passed quietly. Repairs were completed and life at the base returned to normal. Lyra continued her research, but her focus often wandered. She found herself listening to human conversations, studying their behavior. She noticed how they treated each other, not just with logic, but with empathy. When someone was sad, others comforted them. When someone succeeded, they celebrated together. Even their small acts, sharing food, telling stories, laughing, carried meaning. It puzzled her, and it fascinated her. One evening, she joined Ethan and a few others in the cafeteria. The humans insisted she try something called pizza. She looked at the slice suspiciously. "It looks oily," she said. Ethan laughed. "That's the best part. Just try it." She hesitated, then took a small bite. The mix of flavors, warm bread, melted cheese, tangy sauce, surprised her. Her eyes widened slightly. "Well?" Ethan asked, smiling. Lyra nodded slowly. "It is not unpleasant." Everyone laughed, and she found herself smiling without realizing it. For the first time, she felt like she belonged at that table. Not as a commander, not as an alien, but as part of something human. A few weeks later, Lyra received a message from the Andarian Council. They wanted a report on her mission and her impressions of Earth. The message was formal, full of rules and questions about human weaknesses. When she sat down to write the report, she hesitated. The words didn't come easily. How could she explain what she had seen? She finally began. "Humans are unpredictable. They lack order, discipline, and control. Yet, despite these flaws, they possess a strength that logic cannot measure. They connect through emotion. They learn through mistakes. And they build unity where others would find chaos. They are not perfect, but they are extraordinary." When she finished, she realized her hands were trembling. She had written something she truly believed. That night, Lyra went outside to clear her thoughts. The sky was clear again, full of stars. She could see the Milky Way stretching like a river of light. She heard footsteps behind her. "Ethan, you're out here again?" he said softly. "Thinking?" "Always," she replied. He stood beside her, hands in his pockets. "You've changed since you got here." She turned her head slightly. "How so?" "You smile more. You listen. You don't keep as much distance as before." Lyra gave a quiet laugh. "Perhaps Earth's atmosphere is affecting me. Or maybe it's the people." She looked at him. His face was calm, his eyes reflecting the stars. "You humans," she said softly. "You see meaning in everything." "That's how we survive," he said. "We find hope even when it seems foolish." Lyra looked back at the sky. "And hope is something Andaria has forgotten." "Then maybe," Ethan said gently, "you can remind them." The wind was cool, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. There was a quiet understanding between them, a bridge built not by technology or treaties, but by shared respect. Over the next few weeks, Lyra worked closely with the human scientists. They learned from her, and she learned from them. She began teaching them advanced energy stabilization techniques, while they showed her new ways of problem-solving, creative, spontaneous, full of imagination. She started to see how emotion and logic could exist together, balancing each other. It was something her people had never understood. During one experiment, when a human engineer accidentally overloaded a device, Lyra expected anger or punishment. Instead, the team simply laughed and tried again. No blame, no fear, only teamwork. It amazed her. Afterward, she told Ethan quietly, "Your people do not fear failure." He smiled. "Failure is how we grow. Every mistake is a step forward." Lyra nodded slowly. "Perhaps that is why your species has survived so long." That evening, she stood by the ocean once more. The waves reflected the orange light of sunset. She felt at peace. She remembered her first day on Earth, how she had looked at this planet with disdain, calling it chaotic and foolish. Now she saw it differently. Earth was alive, full of emotion, struggle, and beauty. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. For the first time in her long career, Lyra didn't feel like a commander or a scientist. She felt human. When Ethan joined her on the shore, she didn't speak. They simply stood side by side, watching the sun disappear beyond the horizon. Lyra finally said quietly, "Maybe belonging is not about where you come from. Maybe it's about where you finally understand yourself." Ethan smiled. "Then I'd say you've found your place." She looked at him, then at the vast sky above. "Perhaps," she whispered, "I have." The wind carried her words into the distance, across the waves, across the stars, and perhaps all the way back to Andaria. The morning sky above Earth's research base was painted with gold and pink. Captain Lyra Varen stood near the observation deck watching the sunrise. The beauty of it still surprised her. On Andaria, sunrises were cold, pale, and silver without warmth. But here the colors seemed alive, almost breathing. As she stood there, Tev hurried toward her, holding a data tablet. His expression was tense. "Captain," he said, "a message has arrived from the Andarian High Council. It's marked urgent." Lyra turned slowly. "Show me." The message glowed in blue letters across the screen. It was brief, direct, and heavy with authority. "Captain Varen, your time on Earth has ended. Return immediately. New directives require the withdrawal of Andarian presence from human territory. Cooperation is to be suspended until further notice. Obedience to this command is expected without question." Lyra's eyes stayed on the message for a long moment. Then she lowered the tablet. Tev spoke softly. "They are recalling us." Without explanation. "Yes," Lyra said quietly, "which means something is wrong." Later that day, she met with Commander Ethan Cole in the main control room. He had already heard the news from his superiors. His face showed disappointment but not surprise. "So that's it," he said. "They're pulling you out." Lyra nodded. "It appears the Council has lost patience with this alliance. They believe Earth is too unstable to be trusted." Ethan folded his arms. "And what do you believe?" Lyra hesitated. For the first time in her career, she didn't know how to answer. "I believe they are wrong," she said at last. "But my duty is to obey orders." Ethan looked at her for a long moment. "You've seen what we're capable of, Lyra. You know we're not the monsters they think we are." "I know," she said softly. "But Andaria does not listen to feelings." "Only logic," he sighed. "Then maybe logic isn't always enough." Lyra looked away, unable to meet his gaze. Deep inside, a storm was building, one that had nothing to do with weather. For the next 2 days, preparations for departure began. Andarian ships landed quietly, collecting equipment and personnel. The human scientists tried to hide their disappointment. The partnership had been their greatest success, the first true cooperation between two intelligent worlds. Lyra oversaw the process in silence. Tev worked beside her, but even he could feel her unease. At one point, he said quietly, "Captain, if I may speak freely." Lyra nodded. "You may." "I don't want to leave," Tev admitted. "The humans, they are strange, but they make life feel full. I've learned more here in 3 months than I did in years on Andaria." Lyra looked at him. "You are young. You speak boldly." Tev smiled faintly. "Maybe Earth has influenced me." Her lips curved into the smallest smile. "Perhaps it has influenced us both." But when she looked toward the sky, her heart felt heavy. She couldn't shake the thought that leaving Earth meant leaving behind something she didn't fully understand yet. Something important. That evening, she received another encrypted transmission, this time from High Chancellor Maris, her superior on Andaria. The Chancellor's holographic image appeared before her, tall and stern, his voice cold. "Captain Varen," he began, "your mission is complete. You are to return immediately. The Council has determined that the humans' emotional instability poses a threat to interstellar order. Lyra kept her tone calm. With respect, Chancellor, I disagree. The humans are impulsive, yes, but they are also creative and resilient. They adapt faster than any species I've seen. The Chancellor's expression hardened. You have been away too long, Captain. Do not let their simplicity cloud your judgment. Logic must remain your guide. Lyra clenched her hands behind her back. Logic has limits. Humanity's strength lies in their hearts, not only their minds. Enough, the Chancellor snapped. You will obey your orders or you will face dismissal from command. The hologram flickered out, leaving her alone in the dim room. For the first time in years, Lyra felt trapped, torn between two worlds. The next morning, Ethan found her outside the hangar, staring at her ship. I heard about your conversation, he said quietly. Lyra didn't ask how he knew. The humans always found ways to know things. He stepped closer. You don't have to go, you know. You can stay here. We'd protect you. Lyra shook her head. You don't understand. On Andaria, disobedience is not forgiven. They would brand me as a traitor. Ethan looked at her seriously. Sometimes doing what's right means breaking a rule. His words hit her like a shock. She had always lived by the rule of order, of control. But now, standing here, she realized that maybe control wasn't the same as purpose. Ethan, she said softly, if I stay, it could cause conflict between our worlds. He met her eyes. And if you go, you'll lose yourself. Lyra turned away. You speak as if belonging is simple. He smiled sadly. It never is. That night, Lyra walked through the empty corridors of the base. The lights were dim, the air silent. She passed by rooms where laughter once filled the air, where humans had taught her about food, music, and friendship. Every step felt heavier than the last. When she reached the observation window, she saw the earth below in full moonlight. Oceans like silver mirrors, clouds glowing softly. It was a living world, imperfect but full of life. She whispered to herself, how can I leave this behind? Tev appeared behind her quietly. Captain, we're ready for departure. The others are waiting. She turned to face him. Tev, if you were in my place, what would you do? He thought for a moment. I would follow my heart, because logic may guide ships, but it doesn't guide souls. Lyra looked at him with surprise. You sound like a human, he smiled. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. The final hour before departure arrived. The humans gathered at the landing site to say goodbye. There were no speeches, just quiet handshakes and heavy hearts. Ethan stood among them, watching as Lyra prepared to board her ship. When she approached him, he said softly, I guess this is farewell. Lyra looked into his eyes, calm, warm, and full of trust. Perhaps only for now, she said. He nodded slowly. If you ever come back, there'll be a place for you here. She wanted to say something more, but her voice wouldn't come. Instead, she turned and walked toward her ship. The engines hummed to life. But before she could give the command to lift off, a sudden alarm echoed through the base. Red lights flashed. A human officer shouted, Unknown vessel approaching. It's not one of ours. Lyra's instincts took over. She rushed to the control deck and activated the sensors. The readings made her heart tighten. It was an Andarian enforcement ship sent to ensure her compliance. Ethan appeared beside her. They're here to take you? Or to destroy the Alliance, she said grimly. Within minutes, the Andarian ship sent a transmission. The voice of the Chancellor echoed through the speakers. Captain Varen, you have delayed long enough. Return now or face neutralization. The humans are not to interfere. Lyra's crew looked at her, uncertain and afraid. Ethan whispered, They can't do this. Not here. Lyra's mind raced. She could obey, return home in shame, or she could stand her ground, risking everything she had built. Tev's voice broke the silence. Captain, what are your orders? Lyra looked at the humans, then at her own people. Her heart pounded. For the first time in her life, logic gave her no answer. But she remembered Ethan's words. Sometimes doing what's right means breaking a rule. She lifted her chin. Open a channel to the Chancellor. The holographic face appeared again, cold and unyielding. Chancellor Maris, she said clearly, I will not return. The Chancellor's eyes widened. You dare defy the Council? I dare to speak the truth, she said. These humans are not a threat. They are a hope, A reminder that strength is more than logic and order. You may call me disobedient, but I will not abandon what I've learned. The Chancellor's voice turned to anger. Then you are no longer Andarian. Lyra took a deep breath. Perhaps not. Perhaps I am something more. The transmission ended. The Andarian ship began to charge its weapons. Ethan looked at her. What now? Lyra turned to her crew. Prepare defense shields. We protect this planet. The humans and Andarians worked side by side, uniting in purpose. For the first time, they weren't two species. They were one team. As the enemy ship approached, Lyra stood at the command console, calm and resolute. She no longer felt torn between worlds. She had chosen her place, not out of duty, but out of belief. Ethan's voice came through the intercom. They're locking on us, Lyra smiled faintly. Then let them see what unity looks like. The sky above Earth lit up with the fire of engines and shields. Two civilizations clashed, one fighting for control, the other for freedom. And as the first wave of light streaked across the heavens, Lyra Varen stood firm, not as an Andarian commander, but as something new, a bridge between hearts, between worlds, between what was and what could be. The sky above Earth turned bright with streaks of light as the Andarian enforcement ship descended through the atmosphere. The clouds rippled like waves, glowing with the fire of engines and energy shields. Inside the human base, alarms echoed across the corridors. Scientists and soldiers rushed to their stations. The ground trembled softly beneath their feet. Captain Lyra Varen stood at the command console, her calm voice cutting through the noise. Activate shields around the base. Prepare defense turrets. No one fires unless I give the order. Commander Ethan Cole stood beside her. They're coming in fast. If they open fire, this whole facility will go up in flames. Lyra's expression stayed firm. Then we make them listen before they shoot. She opened a direct communication link to the Andarian ship. The holographic image of Chancellor Maris appeared again, his eyes cold as ice. Captain Varen, he said, you have disobeyed direct orders. Your ship and crew are under Andarian law. Surrender now. Lyra stood tall. I will not surrender to injustice. Earth does not deserve punishment. Maris's voice deepened. You are blinded by emotion. You have forgotten what it means to be Andarian. She took a deep breath. No, I have remembered what it means to be alive. There was silence on the line. Then, without another word, the transmission ended. The Andarian ship's weapons began to charge. Blue energy gathered along its hull, bright as lightning. Ethan turned to Lyra. They're really going to fire. Lyra nodded. Then we defend this world together. She issued commands in perfect rhythm. Human engineers and Andarian technicians worked side by side, fusing their technology. The base's defensive grid, once weak, became stronger as both systems linked. Sparks flew, screens flickered, and tension filled the air. Tev ran to her side. Captain, shields are at maximum, but they won't hold for long if the enemy fires full power. Then we'll show them another kind of power, Lyra said. The first shot struck. A burst of blue light exploded in the sky. The shields flared but held firm. The humans cheered, but Lyra stayed focused. Return signal only, she ordered. No counterattack. I want them to see restraint, not war. Ethan looked at her with surprise. You're not fighting back? Lyra shook her head. If we fight, we prove their fears right. If we stand firm, we prove our truth. He smiled faintly. You sound more human every minute. She glanced at him. Maybe humanity is more contagious than I thought. A second blast hit the shields, harder this time. The floor shook. Equipment fell. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Still the shield held. Tev shouted from the control panel. Power levels dropping fast, Captain. Lyra made a quick decision. Divert energy from non-essential systems. Focus on shield generators. But that will shut down communication and life support in half the base. Tev warned. Do it, she said firmly. We can breathe later. Right now we must stand. The humans obeyed without question. The lights dimmed, leaving the room glowing only from the flicker of monitors. Outside, the Andarian ship hovered like a giant shadow, its next strike preparing. Lyra opened one final channel to the Chancellor. Her voice was calm, steady, unshaken. Chancellor Maris, look at what you're doing, she said. You speak of order and peace, yet you bring destruction to a world that offered friendship. We came here to learn, not to dominate. You are not protecting Andaria. You are betraying it. The Chancellor didn't respond. But something in his expression changed. A flicker of doubt. Lyra continued, her tone stronger now. If you destroy this base, history will remember that Andaria feared progress, that you destroyed hope instead of embracing it. For a long moment there was silence, then the hologram vanished again. No more words, only tension. Suddenly the Andarian ship's energy field began to waver. Its engines dimmed. It wasn't firing anymore, Tev gasped. They've stopped charging weapons. Ethan frowned. What are they doing? Lyra's heart raced. Wait. Look at the signal array. On the screen, a new transmission appeared. Not from the Chancellor, but from one of the Andarian officers aboard the enforcement ship. Captain Varen, the voice said quietly. Many of us have been watching. We have seen your work with the humans. Perhaps you're right. The Council's fear has blinded them. We will not attack. Lyra closed her eyes for a brief moment of relief. Thank you, she whispered. The Andarian ship began to rise, slowly leaving Earth's atmosphere. No more shots, no more threats. Just silence, tone and peace. The humans cheered. Ethan turned to Lyra with a grin. You did it. Lyra shook her head softly. We did it together. Hours later, the crisis was over. The base was damaged, but safe. The humans celebrated, though exhaustion covered their faces. Lyra stood outside, watching the sky where the Andarian ship had vanished. Ethan joined her quietly. They'll talk about this for generations, he said. Lyra smiled faintly. Perhaps. Or perhaps they'll forget, as most species do. But what matters is that for one day, two worlds stood as one. He nodded. You changed everything today. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the stars. I only followed what I learned from humans, courage, unity, and hope. Ethan chuckled. Then I guess we taught you well. Lyra tilted her head slightly, smiling. And I taught you something about logic, I hope. He laughed. Maybe a little. They stood together in silence, the wind moving softly through the night air. Days turned into weeks. The Andarian Council was silent. No new orders came. Word of Lyra's defiance spread across the stars, whispered in both admiration and fear. Some called her a traitor. Others called her a visionary. But on Earth she had become something else entirely. A symbol of trust. Humans welcomed her wherever she went. She continued to work with their scientists, helping rebuild the damaged systems, guiding their research and sharing knowledge freely. Tev remained by her side, learning more each day. Captain, he said one afternoon, I think Andaria will come to understand one day. Maybe not now, but someday. Lyra looked up from her work. I hope so, Tev, because if they don't, they'll miss what truly matters. What's that? He asked. That unity is not born from sameness, she said softly. It's born from understanding. One evening, the base hosted a quiet ceremony. The humans had created a new alliance charter, one built on equality between Earth and any species willing to cooperate peacefully. Ethan handed Lyra a small metal emblem, engraved with both human and Andarian symbols intertwined. This represents what you started, he said. A bridge between our worlds. Lyra took the emblem carefully. It's not mine alone. It belongs to everyone who believes in connection, not control. As she looked at the symbol, she felt a warmth deep inside her, the same feeling she had once tried to ignore. The warmth of belonging. That night, she returned to the ocean shore. The waves shimmered under the moonlight, calm and endless. She could hear laughter from the distant base, humans celebrating, full of life. Ethan approached quietly, standing beside her as he always did. You know, he said, you could stay here for good. Earth could use someone like you. Lyra smiled faintly. Andaria still needs someone like me too. Change must begin somewhere. He nodded slowly. Then you'll go back? One day, she said. When they're ready to listen. She turned her gaze toward the stars, toward the home she once thought she understood. I used to believe strength meant perfection, she said softly. Now I know it means compassion, Ethan smiled. And I used to think aliens couldn't understand us. Looks like we both learned something. They stood there in silence, two beings from different worlds watching the sky that belonged to both. Weeks later, Lyra prepared to leave Earth for a new mission, not under orders but by choice. Her ship now carried both Andarian and human technology, a true hybrid of minds and ideals. Before she departed, Ethan met her at the launch pad. You sure you're ready? He asked. Lyra nodded. I am. This time I'm not leaving in anger. I'm leaving with hope. He extended his hand. She looked at it, then took it with quiet respect. Safe travels, Captain. Until next time, Commander. As the ship rose through the sky, the humans below watched. Its silver light shimmered against the stars, a symbol of unity that would not fade. Lyra Varen looked down one last time at the blue planet, the world she had once hated, and the people who had changed her forever. Her heart was calm. She whispered softly, "Farewell, Earth. You showed me what it means to belong." The ship soared higher, leaving behind a trail of light that glowed across the night, not as a sign of departure, but as a promise that one day she would return, and somewhere beyond the stars, Andaria listened.